Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of Keeping It Legal. I am Shantae.
I am Hugh Hudson from the Hudson Law Group. We are back with our third episode. Are you excited?
Yes, I'm excited. I'm really excited. I think last week was a good little, a good little video on Asylum. I'm excited to see what this week has.
Yeah, now it's been a long day, so this is true dedication because we had a tremendously long day. We've gone to court. The court was relatively short, but there's no immigration court that is less than 2 hours away from where we live.
Yeah.
So we drove to court, spent about 10 minutes in court. Drove about 2 hours back.
10 seconds.
Oh,
yeah,
Lord.
It's been a long day, but we did promise another video, and so here we are, ready to deliver. So today we'll be talking about withholding of removal.
Can we make it quick, please?
Of course.
Of course we can. She's dragged me into this. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, yes, we talked about asylum last time.
Talked about asylum, yes, the requirements.
All right, and then today we're gonna piggyback off of asylum and talk about something that's asylum adjacent, so it's similar to asylum. Withholding of removal. Withholding removal actually has been in the news quite a bit recently as well. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kilmar Abrea Garcia's case, but that's withholding removal.
Yes.
So without any further ado, let's just provide a recap of asylum, and then we'll jump right into withholding removal.
Right. So providing a recap of asylum. Okay, so we know that persons who seek asylum are persons who have been persecuted by the government or someone the government has failed to protect them from in their home country, and they're in the U.S. and they're seeking refuge in the United States. Yeah.
Nicely done. They're in the U.S. and they're seeking protection. They're scared to go back home, right? They're fearful of being harmed, being persecuted back home, and that persecution is because of has been because of one of the 5 categories, or will likely be because they belong to one of the 5 categories, which are race, religion, political opinion, belonging to belonging to
a particular
social group. Like I said, it's been a long day.
And nationality, of course.
And your nationality. So I was trying to couple 2 of them together, but like I said, it's been a long day. It's at the end of the day, but forgive me.
Still got it right though.
Yes.
So this is one application. Let's not forget that one application. So if you don't get the asylum, you can always apply for withholding of removal. Well, you actually apply for everything, and then the judge decides what they will grant. So let's say you don't get asylum.
What is withholding removal? You know?
Yeah. So withholding of removal, according to Section 241(b)(3), I believe, of the of the INA, withholding of removal is a protection granted to someone who's fearful of returning to their home country.
Yes. So similar to asylum, right? That's exactly what asylum is. One of the differences between asylum and withholding removal is that withholding of removal requires a heightened burden of proof.
Yes.
Right? Asylum is you have to show that you're likely to be persecuted. Withholding removal, you have to go a notch higher than that. You have to show you're more likely than not to be persecuted.
Right. You have to show the court why they can't send you back home, essentially.
Yeah, not necessarily why they can't send you back home, but that you're more likely than not to establish the persecution. And there's still other factors, but that's the first kind of distinction between the asylum and the withholding or removal. As you stated, it's on the same form, so instantly you may have a question as far as then why would anyone want withholding and removal? Because in the same form, the elements seem to be the same. Can you answer the question as far as like why you think anyone would want to apply for withholding removal instead of asylum?
Applying for I think you'd want to apply for withholding of removal. It would primarily be because you're granted stay in the United States. So although you're not granted permanent status, you can stay in the United States.
Yeah. So yes. Good answer. It was a trick question. The answer is you really don't apply for withholding or removal. It's more like a default status that you receive. So you apply for asylum. It is on the same form, right? So all you have to do is check a box on the same application. And everyone should check this box. Every attorney I know will check the withholding removal box, because if you are, if the judge grants you, if the judge does not grant your asylum, the judge will still evaluate your withholding case. And we talked a little bit in the previous episode we recorded with asylum, as far as like there are some nuances to asylum. Like, for instance, if you file your asylum application outside of a year of being physically present in the United States, then you can disqualify yourself from being from becoming an asylee.
Whereas withholding of removal, you're not bounded by that 1 year requirement. Exactly. You can file it after that 1 year.
Exactly. So there are also nuances like policies like the third country policy, which is a policy instituted by, it was instituted under Biden before he left office, and it's continuing in this administration as well, where if you've traveled through en route to the United States, you've traveled through other countries, and you fail to apply for asylum in one of the countries that you would have transited through, then you are also ineligible for asylum. And there's also factors like criminal conviction, depends on the type of criminal conviction that you have, that may make you ineligible for asylum, but you can still qualify for withholding of removal.
Right. Another nuance to withholding of removal that I have noticed is that, unlike asylum, withholding of removal does not lead to permanent residency here.
Yes, that's also a very big distinction. That's why you always apply for the asylum, because if you apply for the asylum, you're granted asylum. Asylum leads to a green card, and then eventually leads to your U.S. citizenship.
Right.
Withholding or removal, you're stuck. You're receiving legal status, but it's not permanent status whatsoever. So you're kind of stuck. Essentially, you have a deportation, an active deportation order, but that deportation is withheld because the government or the judge has recognized that you can be killed should you be sent back to your native country. Right. So that's another big distinction between the asylum and the withholding removal. Another distinction as well is also only a judge could grant withholding removal. I don't know if you remember, but with asylum, we discussed the two ways that you can file for asylum. You can file offensively for asylum, or you can do a defensive filing, which is when you're in immigration proceedings. USCIS will not and cannot grant withholding removal. Only a judge could. Right, so you will have to be in front of a judge in order to be able to obtain withholding of removal.
And another nuance that I've realized is that, unlike asylum, for withholding of removal, you only apply for yourself, really. You can't apply for your spouse or dependents.
Yeah, there is no derivative benefits to withholding removal. Again, asylum, if you are granted asylum, your spouse is also granted asylum as a derivative asylee. And also any children that you may, biological children, well, not just biological children, but it could be adopted children as well. But your children under the age of 21 are also granted asylum, right? That is not the case for withholding removal. In a situation where you have a family, you will need to, the family will all need to have their separate claim and separate grants. Yeah, so it's similar, but it's a major distinction, right? And you certainly, if you could apply for asylum, definitely want to go there. Like, for instance, if you think the only thing that will prevent you from obtaining asylum is the 1 year filing deadline, you might want to do everything you can to make sure that your application is filed within that 1 year, right? Because it's a drastic difference between the two. I mentioned the Kilmar's case. One thing that is being played out right now with withholding removal, though the judge prevents DHS or ICE from deporting that person into that country that he's a native of, there are still options where they could be deported into a third country, or if the circumstances in that country has changed. The Kilmar case, I believe, from what I've seen in the news, that he was granted protection from El Salvador, which is where he's from, because of he will likely face persecution or harm at the hands of the cartels, right? at the time that that grant came by the judge, the cartel were more prevalent within El Salvador. DHS argument right now, from what I've seen, is that they are indicating that the circumstance has changed to where he's no longer faces present danger, right? Which means that because the gangs are no longer um, a threat, that the circumstance has changed to where he could be deported, right? And moreover, and that's why you and I have had discussion, and I've told you that this case may not be the case that everyone the media wants to focus on. There's a lot of, in my opinion, unjust deportation that's happening. Um, but with this particular case, even if Kilmar were to be returned to the United States, he still could be deported to a third country that is willing to take him. So it's kind of like an argument to a dead end. Although I do understand the argument here is that the courts need to have its independence, and the court judges' orders need to be respected. So I definitely get that argument.
Right.
But it's a case that will lead to a dead end.
And then one of the things that we must touch on is rather, what would make an application ineligible for withholding of removal?
You could be ineligible with withholding removal if you have a aggravated felony conviction.
Right.
An aggravated felony is a inherently dangerous crime, right? Like the attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, those kind of extraordinary crimes and conviction. Right?
All right, let's touch on CAT real quick. So, what is the CAT convention, or is that another checkbox on the application?
Yeah. So CAT is on the same application. It's CAT is the Convention Against Torture. It's a UN, the United Nations law that state that no country could or should deport someone into a situation where they are likely to be tortured. It's a distinction here. The obvious distinction is torture as opposed to harm.
I'm guessing the burden of proof is much higher.
It is.
For this one, unlike withholding of removal.
Yeah, the burden of proof is higher, and with this particular status, you have to show that the government will be the one in charge, or will be the one inflicting the torture, not just someone the government has failed to protect you from, but the actual government, i.e., like police or the politician or someone that will be considered the actual government.
So then it would not have the 5 protected grounds as asylum.
No, so it's no, so it doesn't. It could be torture for whatever reason. It doesn't not need to fit within the 5 protected grounds. So you're right. Let's right.
Okay, a quick distinction between the 3. What would you say? Asylum, withholding of removal, and the CAT convention.
Well, the distinction is, well, the obvious distinction is the burden of proof.
Right.
Asylum, the more it's more discretionary. It's a lesser burden of proof for asylum. Like I stated, withholding removal, you have to show more likely than not that you will be persecuted. And again, both withholding removal and asylum have the same requirement, which is the 5 category that we've discussed in May. And move on to CAT. CAT is the lesser of the 3. So you're actually moving from 1, 2, 3. So CAT is kind of like it's like a Hail Mary. It's like the last moment or last ditch effort to save yourself from being deported. Again, the CAT, like withholding removal, is a defensive application. It's a defensive stance. You want to defend yourself from being deported.
Right.
CAT likely will come into play when someone is being deported because of a crime they would have committed. Right. So if you are a lawful permanent resident with a green card and you commit certain crimes, like a aggravated felony, that will put you back into deportation. Right. Once you're back in deportation, you will have to argue something to prevent DHS from removing you because you were convicted with an aggravated felony. That disqualifies you from most other status. Right. Withholding removal being one of them. So you no longer have that option. option. You no longer could argue cancellation of removal because of the conviction. So therefore, you have a last ditch effort to argue for the judge's discretion to allow you to remain in the United States, and therefore you will make an argument for cat if you have an argument that you will be tortured should you return to your home.
Okay. Right.
It's a mouthful.
After a long day.
After a long day, it's.
Yeah, I think we've done justice. I mean, we'd want to hear from you. Please leave us a comment in the comment section. Any questions at all, any queries. And if you have any queries or any concerns, feel free to reach out to the Hudson Law Group.
Absolutely. We're here to help you in whatever way we could. Like I said, it will be great if we can receive more of your feedback. Potentially you can float some topics that you would like us to discuss.
Yes.
We're trying to go through the entire INA if we if we could. And also I promise you we will touch on some personal injuries. I know we'll kind of be pushing it to the back burner, but we're gonna get there. We're also gonna have some more excited times ahead where we're gonna invite guests.
And our colleagues as well.
Some of our colleagues, like some of the staff member that work with the Hudson Law Group, clients, current and previous clients, to kind of give and share their testimony and what their experience was like working with the Hudson Law Group. So please stay tuned. Be active.
Yeah. We're here to educate and to entertain. So come along this journey with us. Next week we're doing deportation.
Yes.
That's a fun topic.
Yeah, so we try to touch the hot topic. Immigration is pretty wide range. It's very vast, right? There's a lot of different subsections to immigration, right? So we're trying to kind of hit the stuff that are prevalent today. Like there's a lot of deportation issues, asylum. So we're trying to make sure we get to the hot topic first, and get it out of the way so we can kind of dive into more niched areas of immigration.
I think this is my favorite area. I love me some asylum.
It's fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so not my favorite area. I enjoy immigration. I enjoy all of it. I will give you all my favorite at some point once we discuss it. But I do like asylum. Asylum brings me great joy when I win asylum cases, because the people that apply for asylum, by definition, they are refugee, right? And refugees are people who are really desperate for help, right? These people are fleeing all sorts of bad conditions, right? And they're here seeking my help. And when we're granted asylum, and I've gotten a lot of asylum cases granted, it brings me great joy. Right? But as far as like what I wake up and get excited to do, I have some other areas. Once we get there, I'll let you all.
Nice. Okay. Well, I'll see you next week, Mr. Hudson. Same time, same place.
Oh man, we'll keep it legal.
Yeah. Bye.
Be gone.